Hi, welcome back. I will start this part of the introduction by speaking on the statistics in economics, for which basically uh, I have already mentioned in the previous part. Statistics was a dominant method in processing data and providing evidence in economics. And statistics is a basic science to process data. In other sciences, not all of them, but in some of them, experiments are common where you can isolate one factor and test its effect. But in economics, it's not that much possible because it's not that much possible to make specific settings for experiments, which means usually we have data that contains various effects, and in using statistics we are trying to isolate those effects and try to understand what the factor we are interested in, or the factors we are interested in, how it has affected the interested variable. So the fact that, for example, unemployment and growth rates are correlated, rising up together, doesn't mean necessarily unemployment affects growth rate positively. It might even affect it negatively. So we need to find a way to isolate effect of unemployment from other factors, if that's what we are testing. So this is a science that is doing that basically. And there's a specific field in economics which is kind of apply the methodology of the statistics, which is a different science, by the way, to economics. That's called econometrics. Okay, actually, biology has a similar sub-branch, which is called biostatistics, for example. So it's not an uncommon thing. And for this course, you don't need to know statistics. It's not related to the main part of the course. But in order to understand some articles, basically, and in one chapter, basically, also you need to have some statistics knowledge. I have, in the relevant part, actually, I'm introducing already you the necessary statistics knowledge, but for articles especially, it might be necessary. You can get necessary statistics knowledge from the book of this course, as well as there will be also some statistical knowledge from basic statistical analysis on ODTÜ class also. Okay, so this is the methodology. Now we can go to the labor economics, where actually I will just set the stage but not go much deep into the stage, and also tell you different views on the labor economics, and which is the direction we are taking basically. And then we will go finally, and I will introduce you the program of this class, this course. So labor power, as I said, is the resources we as humans have, and it's part of our being also. So individual level, you might say it is a specific resource. But how should we study it in economics, even though it is a resource that is directly connected to our being, what we are? From the economics perspective, is it okay to study it as just a resource, or should we study it as a resource that is specific, that's different from the other types of resources? Or should we study it as a key resource? All three are possible. Usually in mainstream economics, it is something between the first one, just a resource, or a specific resource. Specific resources mostly, if you look labor economics perspective, you see the specific characteristics of the labor as a resource, basically. So, within the economic system, labor force is created both as individuals' abilities and beings, skills, but also at social level, through the interaction of the people, how productive we are depends also with whom we are working and how we organize with other people. It is sold and bought in the market, not in physical sense, but we are not meeting in the market mostly, except very rare cases like construction industry in the video. Usually we apply to sell our labor, and the company either accepts or rejects to buy our labor power, at least for the skilled labor force. But also for the unskilled labor force, it's significant in many jobs. It's like that, and it is used in production after it is bought. The relation between the buyer and seller doesn't end. You go to the institution of your buyer, and you work for that person. And at that moment, that person is owner of your labor force, which basically means that that person will decide what you do in that production process. Well, currently in academia market, as I have said, is a focus. The way labor force is created and the way it is used in production is not that much studied. And when it is studied, even it is studied sometimes in relation to the market. How market affects the very decision-making process the labor force is created, and how market affects the way it is used in production. Even sometimes some artificial markets are created to analyze the way labor power is used in production, or the way people give decisions that create the ultimate labor force, labor power in the economic system. Okay. We can, and lastly, let's say, we can study labor focusing on individual decisions, looking specifically to the individuals. We can use the institutional perspective, as I said, that's one approach, and one lead to also one school in economics. Alternatively, we can look to general social perspective, how society, its structure, and its effect on the people is shaping the labor force and the way it is used. Again, in academia and in this course, our focus are individual decisions, although sometimes maybe we can look to the other side, but individual decisions are still our focus point. Well, I would like to mention one aspect of labor economics, which is really, in my opinion, the biggest challenge in labor economics. I will just mention it now. Maybe in later phases I will also mention, but there is no specific part of the labor economics directed to this. Heterogeneity of the labor power. Labor is something heterogeneous. There are different types of labor, and each of them has different characteristics, different function in the production process. So how do we take all these different types of labor, their particular effects, their particular relation, their interaction in the economics? So for example, how do we measure their productivity if there are 5 different types of people are work is done in a production process? Should we just think that the guy who is getting highest wage is most productive? But by doing that, we have an assumption which is not able to be, we are not able to prove. If we think wage is proportional to productivity, then we need to find something else to prove, to measure the productivity of the person. So if wages reflect the productivity, we should find a way to prove that. And in addition to that, the interaction of these different labor processes, how they form together, how they form together this production system, economic system in general, how different types of workers in the economic system bond together the overall collective labor power in the economic system. That's the basic challenge. So the fact that labor is something diverse, something heterogeneous, is a challenge in the economic system. Usually in economics, labor is taken as a single, non-differentiated resource L, like a single commodity, a homogeneous commodity, like all labor power is the same. In the models, it's taken usually like that, including Marxian models and neoclassical models. Feminist economics is kind of a little bit different from that. In mainstream economics, sometimes skilled and unskilled labor, that's the exceptions, are usually in the labor economics model, not in mainstream models. Skilled labor and unskilled labor is sometimes differentiated as skilled labor pretty much means that the workers who got the university education. Sometimes human capital is also used, which means actually the amount of knowledge and skills, additional skills people have, in addition to a baseline minimum level of knowledge and skill necessary for working. But also how to measure this human capital is also a big problem in economics. Usually the models, the economists fall back to the education. I mean, the amount of years you spend in school is taken as the amount of human capital people have. Anyway, let's go down. So these are some issues related to the labor economics, poor laws. You can say unemployment benefits, unemployment rules, hours of work, I mean how much people work and how it is specified, labor organizations, unions, basically, immigration, migrant labor, agriculture, industrial service workers, different workers working in different fields in the economic system, skilled labor force, unskilled labor force, social security system, which is basically a system of retirement, and flexibility of labor market, how same worker can work at different jobs, and how much it's easy to hire a worker, fire a worker. Well, you can also reflect how much it is possible for the worker to quit a job and work in the same job. So are workers working in the same job or they are changing jobs frequently? So those are issues related to the labor economics. I won't go into much detail with them. So this is the outline of the course, and then we will end. So first we will have a part where we will study how labor force is created, its size and its quality, its productivity also, where we will see labor supply participation, hours of work and human capital. And then we will see how labor market is created, how demand of this labor power is formed and they meet with supply in the market, and how imperfections in the market and or regulations work, like monopsony and minimum wage. And there we will see in a specific type of monopsony exists in the labor market. You don't need to have a literal single buyer to have a monopsony in the labor market. Well, then we have extend the labor market model, go beyond the standard market models, where we will introduce unions and collective bargaining and job search process and unemployment, which shows actually, even if we study labor as a market, it's not a typical market. And then we will go beyond the labor market model, studying discrimination, internal labor markets, inside of the company, how promotions work, personal economics, how inside of the company you increase the productivity of labor, motivate your workers, and wage inequality, income inequality, and poverty, basically. And lastly, probably we will also have time for that, we will review labor market data of the world. So this is our course, and this was our introduction. If you have any question, feel free to ask. Since we are living at a time of a pandemic, let me end by saying I hope all of you will stay healthy.